What we're seeing before our eyes is the transformation of a Muslim site with the historical, religious, and cultural integrity of 1,300 years of Islamic history being transformed into a shared Jewish-Muslim site. That is the dream of the Temple Mount movement. It is the nightmare of Muslims and Palestinians, and we are far closer to that today than we were 2 weeks ago.
That you're being a bit hypocritical in the sense that you're saying that the Arab town has grown, but your town wasn't here at all.
This is, as far as I'm concerned, it's Israeli territory, and the whole of Israel belongs to the Jewish people.
الحمد لله الذي أنزل على عبده الكتاب ولم يجعل له عوجا.
These agreements prove that the nations of the region are breaking free from the failed approaches of the past. Today's signing sets history on a new course, and there will be other countries very, very soon that will follow these great leaders.
Blessings of the peace we make today will be enormous. First, because this peace will eventually expand to include other Arab states.
Assalamu alaikum. If you've been watching this channel, you know there's a very strong movement lately in Israel for the establishment of the Temple Mount.
Our Prime Minister finally understood that access to the Temple Mount for Jews must be normalized. Our ultimate goal is to build the third temple. It's undoubtedly the reason why we came here for a pilgrimage. For the temple, we want to restore the building to perform new sacrifices, just like thousands of years ago. It's only the beginning. For the redemption to be complete, we must build the third temple here.
Throughout the years, not only has the Temple Mount movement grown, it has gone mainstream. What was once a radical and extreme fringe in Israel is now very much front and center. Today, a vast majority of Netanyahu's ruling party would vote in favor of Jewish prayer on Haram al-Sharif, on the Temple Mount. And there has been a lively discussion not only in Jerusalem, but worldwide. Why shouldn't Jews be allowed to pray on the Mount? What's wrong with that? Don't we have freedom of religion? We're like Rosa Parks, who is told to sit in the back of the bus, and all of a sudden this movement is a human rights movement. The dream of the Temple Mount movement, and I'm talking about the moderate ones, is the nightmare of Palestinians and Muslims. And that is what is called a temporal division of the Temple Mount Haram al-Sharif. You do not divide it physically, you divide it time-wise, so that there will be hours of the day in which it will be a Jewish site. There will be hours of the day it will be a Muslim site. This is the model of the Ibrahimiyya Mosque, the Tomb of the Patriarchs, which I have to say, Hebron is probably the most toxic place in Israel-Palestine. It is where occupation is at its worst. And the most toxic place in the toxic place is that mosque. It is simply a grotesque representation of sanctity. And we are already seeing this happen. In the past, for example, the Israeli police would deny the Temple Mount movement access to Haram al-Sharif in the particularly sacred days, final days of Ramadan. No more. Basically, we are imposing our presence. Many in the Temple Mount declare their intention. And what this means is the transformation of Al-Aqsa, Haram al-Sharif, and Temple Mount. For me, it's Temple Mount. I believe our temple was there. I just don't think it should be weaponized against Muslims, and it doesn't give me any specific rights of prayer today.
We know why that movement is, to bring about the so-called Messiah, to rule not just over greater Israel, but the entire world.
We're going to discuss the mountains of Israel. I want you to see from a bird's eye view exactly what Jerusalem looks like, because how many of you have heard of the Mount of Olives, Mount Moriah, and Mount Zion? But we don't really know where those are. We know they're in Israel somewhere, And they're all throughout the Bible, but until you actually see on a map kind of where these mountains are at, it's difficult to kind of figure out in your head where they're at. So here's how it worked. Number two, that is Mount Moriah. That is where the Temple Mount is. You can see the square Temple Mount. That is where the Temple Mount is in the center today. Obviously is the Dome of the Rock, which won't be there when the Messiah comes back, I promise.
And this recent deal between Israel and the UAE and other Gulf states, of course, is a major step to this reality. In order for the Messiah to come, the Temple Mount has to be established. And however it happens, some have speculated Al-Aqsa will be brought down accidentally, on purpose, whatever the case is, it needs to happen. And the fine print in this deal allows Jews to establish their prayers freely and to set up shop.
Second to last sentence of the joint statement, the following is said. Al-Aqsa Mosque, not Haram al-Sharif, Al-Aqsa Mosque will be a place of worship to Muslims. All other holy sites in Jerusalem will be open to the worship of people of all faiths. Now, I am aware that for the devout Muslim, the entire esplanade mount is Al-Aqsa, but that's not in the Israeli perception. That is not the American perception. That is not what they mean. This is not accidental. This is not a slip of tongue. This is with malice aforethought. And what it means is Jews, the status quo will be maintained because Jews or non-Muslims will not be allowed to pray inside Al-Aqsa Mosque. But everywhere else they'll be able to pray, and everywhere else is those parts of Haram al-Sharif, the esplanade, the Temple Mount, that is not part of the structure. Al-Aqsa is for the Muslim a large area, but they use the terminology with precision. They mean the structure of the mosque. As the numbers of Temple Mount faithful increase, as the frequency of their visits increase, and also their behavior changes. Today, more often than not, they will walk in as if they're walking into your flat in London, take out tape measure and measure for the drapes and said, soon you're going to be gone and we're going to replace you. And this is what is considered to be the respectful, dignified visits.
The situation in Israel is very frightening. You look at polls in Israel, older people still have some memories of when Israel was a kind of social democratic society. The younger ones don't know that. For them, it's just the rule of force and violence. That's what they know. And they've moved very far to the right.
May Allah protect the sanctity of this blessed location. And for the scholars that promoted this deal and advised the rulers in favor of it, we'll conclude with this.
But the evil scholars are 7 categories. And depending on how evil their evil was, they will be in one of these 7 layers. So he said that the scholars who, when they advised the masses, they became very harsh and mean and nasty. And if anybody dared advise them, they became arrogant. They will be in dark al-awwal. They will be in the first level of Jahannam. In other words, that they are advising others in a very nasty and mean manner, and they're never taking any advice themselves. The second, he said, are the ulama, the scholars who are only interested in taking their knowledge to the sultan and the rulers, to benefit the rulers, right? So he said that's in the second level. So we seek Allah's refuge from any of these levels. But those scholars that are justifying the evil and that are using their knowledge to get, in the good books of the rulers, they're going to be in the second level of hell.